What's good? It's your boy Phenom. All right, I'm going to make a video that was requested of me by a subscriber. It asked me if I'd watch this UK channel's reaction to Deontay Wilder's going off on Radio Raheem after the press conference last night between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So I'm going to do that, man, but I'm not going to respond to the specific guy's comments. I listened to them, and I listened to about half the video, and I didn't really see anything unfair about how he was going about it. He said a couple things that I didn't like. The way that he used the phrase victim mentality, because personally I have I'm very particular in the way that I use words. Whenever I can be, of course, like most people, sometimes I'm just running off at the mouth and I'm not as exact as I should be. But the word victim mentality as it relates to black people has always been really funny to me. When people say that somebody exhibits a victim mentality, my first question is, well, are they a victim? If a person is a victim, then whatever mentality they have is a victim's mentality because they're a victim. And I think that on one side, to act as if you are helpless, there's a difference between being helpless and either being absolutely helpless or being unwilling to find a way to compensate for the problems that you have, right? You can be a victim, but that doesn't mean that you have to remain helpless. But a victim's mentality, when you speak about Deontay Wilder being very upfront about issues related to his people and the way that he sees the way that we see the world and have experienced the world. I won't say we experience the world and the realities that we face daily. To say that he has a victim's mentality, to me, is a yes and no proposition. Yes, not just in America, but throughout the world, people who are considered black have been victims, remain victims of a system that is designed to make people suffer, if not it seems often just because of the fact that they have color in their skin. And to claim that you have not been victimized by that is delusional. That is something different than saying that I am completely helpless in my life. There's nothing that I can do to compensate for the realities that exist in the world in which I live. That is a helpless mentality. That's the way that I see it. Now, speaking specifically about what Radio Raheem asked Deontay Wilder, being somebody from the North who grew up in the North and grew up in a suburban area, I have always my cadence, my accent, and being from the Midwest has always been very neutral. So it's clear from anybody that knows me or hears me speak that I'm not from the Deep South. I'm not from the inner city of the area that I live in, the area that I'm from. And oftentimes people will immediately be able to say, well, it's clear that you've grown up around a lot of European Americans. And that's the truth. So when I'm around people who are listening to the way that I speak, who are not from that area, many people get defensive, and they immediately recognize that you're not from my neighborhood. You're from where they're from. So you might just be what people always call Radio Raheem. So when I hear Radio Raheem speak, and when I hear him speak, I know that he more than likely is over enunciating his words, and he is trying to speak in a way that is very, very clear. But you can tell more than likely, it's a chance that I'm wrong, but more than likely that he is not from the inner city. So I think when people listen to him speak, there is that tendency to think that he is, not that he is from the people, but he might not be of the people. That is just never having met Raheem, not knowing him. That is the feeling that I get when I listen to people describe him. Now, the other side of Radio Raheem is that he is a media guy. And being a media guy, being somebody that is not necessarily sharing his opinion, who doesn't talk to people, to boxing fans, for the specific purpose of engaging in conversations and developing relationships, he walks that media line. And boxing media, in a large part, from somebody like me, in my opinion, somebody that's coming from a fan perspective, is a problem in boxing. Right along with the promoter, right along with the sanctioning bodies, right along with all the 5 million weight classes that we have. They are something that they are oftentimes tools of a promoter. And they have to, or they are utilized by a promoter to get the message out that the promoter wants. That is in the nature of the job. That does not seem to me, though, to always be what inside their mind and what they might feel day to day as people, aside from the job, that might or might not translate into their personal feelings, if you understand what I mean. So I am not as quick to say that Radio Raheem asked that question. And just to clarify, Radio Raheem asked him after Deontay Wilder said that his people had suffered for 400 years. Radio Raheem asked, "What do you mean?" That was a poor phrasing of a question. Poorly phrased question. For one, Deontay Wilder, you was clear, and you know what I mean, is what his response to Radio Raheem was. You know what I mean. Don't act like you don't know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, then there is a really big problem with you. So the way that Radio Raheem could have phrased it was, and I would advise him to phrase something like that in the future, is like, can you expand on that for me? You said this. I want to, would you mind, for the people that are watching, if you could explain in more detail what you mean? I'm sure I know what you mean. What do you mean? And then have Deontay Wilder explain that further. So I'm not hot about Deontay Wilder saying what Deontay Wilder said, because Deontay Wilder is a grown man, and Deontay Wilder is right in what he said. He's unequivocally 100% true in what he said. Now, and the person that you're asking me to respond to started talking about lynchings in the United States and the Deep South, and right. And this is the only correction that I would make on somebody from the UK that wants to speak on that particular issue. People don't have to be from the South to feel that way. People in Chicago, same thing. People in New York, same thing. People out east, same thing. People in the Midwest, same thing. There's not one particular area in the country that is more susceptible or subjected more severely to that system than anybody else. And a correction on the whole, the lynching thing. That was not primarily hundreds of years. It was primarily from about 1883. With the institution of what is called Jim Crow through the mid 1970s. That's when about 3,500 people had experienced that throughout the South, and I do believe that there was some incidents of it. Some people can consider Texas the South. I suppose that it is. It's so big that some of it feels like Midwest or the West, but regardless, it was not something that happened over the institution of slavery happened, and the oppression of people before the institution of slavery kicked off was one thing. And then the institution of slavery was a second thing. And then the transformation from slavery to the Jim Crow era was a third thing. And now the transition from the post Jim Crow era, which was considered the civil rights era, into what is probably now known as the era of mass incarceration is the next one. So it's something that has consistently happened. And it is people being victimized by a system. In my opinion, in the opinion of many people who are in my community whose families have experienced the same thing that mine has, it is. But to say that somebody has a victim mentality, if you've been victimized, then any mentality that you have moving forward is a victim mentality. The question is, do you have a help, or do you believe that you are helpless and that you cannot do anything to compensate for that particular issue? And I would argue that somebody like Deontay Wilder does not have that type of mentality, because Deontay Wilder is actively involved in solving his problems, finding a constructive way by which to compensate for the system that he sees in existence and affecting people on a daily basis. And it's not just gross violence that is the only issue with that there's subtleties to it. So in the response to that particular guy's comment was that it's an oversimplification of the issue, but it's one that I respect because he has at least a acknowledgement of the circumstances that are involved. And that's because the same people, why you look up issues of lynching in the South, that also happened in the UK. After emancipation of the UK, it happened there as well. And I do believe that was around, their emancipation was 1833. So it might have been what's that? 32 years before it was in the US. But there was a significant amount of that going on in Britain as well. So it's not something that is confined to the United States. It's definitely not something confined to the South. And it is a real legitimate issue that Raheem was aware of, but Raheem framed the conversation in a way, that question in a way that could be considered to be offensive to Deontay Wilder. Because he acted as the phrasing of his question made it sound like Raheem didn't know what he was talking about, right? That he had never experienced it before himself, and he had no idea what he was talking about. And the fact that he did that made him feel it's reasonable to interpret that as if you're somebody who's from the community but not of the community, which in the minds of a lot of people is a cardinal violation of your community, and what I think should be reasonable community standards within the Black community. So that's my thoughts on it, and that's it. Hey, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. And with that, I'm out. Peace.